When the lights come down and I leave the stage, it's you that makes it all worthwhile.
Welcome to Direction of the Heart Skype discussion series. I'm your host, Mike Aloia, with American Hearts Radio Entertainment Network, where we bring the hearts of the world together with my brother in Christ, Mr. Pete DeLorenzo from New Jersey. How you doing, Pete?
God bless you, my brother. It's always a pleasure.
Yes, sir. We got a great guest here tonight, Mr. Johnny T. Noctor from South Wales, Sydney, Australia. How's it going, Johnny?
G'day, Mike. G'day, Pete. I'm as
G'day,
flat out as a lizard drinking. Righter.
Right now.
There you go, mate. And we'll all go to the Outback. You know, I go to the Outback here in the States. They have a restaurant called the Outback, and they have a bloomin' onion, they call it. And it's
A
awesome.
bloomin' onion.
Oh, it's awesome. A huge onion like this, and it's all just...
Do they have Outbacks in the Outback?
I was lucky enough to meet a Tasmanian lady, and I've spent a lot of time in Tassie. I haven't spent much time in the Outback, though. I've spent most of my time on the east coast of Australia, Tasmania.
We're talking about the Outback restaurants.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
the Outback.
They have the Outback in the Outback?
You mean the mass exodus of kangaroos? Yeah,
The United States version of what you have is the real McCoy up there, but we got the U.S. generic version. They call it Outback.
The bloomin' onion.
Yeah, bloomin' onion. I think got great food in there. You know, you can get some good food.
my parents live on an acreage covered in kangaroos, and they're like pets.
Really?
But
I walked in one day, Mike. I walked in dressed as Crocodile Dundee and really blew him away.
I love Crocodile Dundee.
I was just about to tell you that one of the best food I've ever tasted is kangaroo.
Really? I didn't.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Was it roasted,
I don't know if I can
filleted?
bring myself- I don't know if I can bring myself to eat a beautiful creature like that.
No, as I was saying, they're pets on my parents' property.
Sure, they're
But in
beautiful.
the outback, the native folk here, the Aboriginals, I mean, they're the best chefs. I want to go out there and have a cook-up feed with them, you know, like they cook everything perfect.
I got an off-the-hook question.
Outback restaurant.
You ever box with a kangaroo?
I am the Australian unknown boxing kangaroo.
Be good
Really?
to treat with. Good shadow box.
Yeah, let's
That's
see that.
it.
Okay, Johnny, give us a little insight on your T-shirt, the Boxing Hobo, and that's a book that you wrote, correct?
Yeah, he's actually got 4 books, Mike, and I
My first. Oh,
Wow.
dear.
which I'm
Crikey.
all 4 of them, and I'm reading them cover to
Yeah,
cover.
and I'm a bit embarrassed about that, Pete, because I'm sending over an autographed copy. I just got that one sent from Amazon, and I'm sending over you an autographed copy. But yeah, my first 2 books, they're novels for disguise.
Yep, I have them.
They're the novels.
Give us the premise of the Boxer
Yes,
Hobo. That's what I'm interested in, because you are a boxer, correct?
Correct. I've only got a couple of my so-called fights on YouTube, the Fox Sports so-called fights on YouTube, but I started boxing late. I started boxing in my 30s.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, there's the alcoholism thing. The best thing to read is my latest book.
So you're saying that you started professionally boxing at 30?
When I was in my 30s, we've discussed alcoholism. I'd spent years working shift work, and lucky enough I met a Tasmanian lady. I worked night shift. Unfortunately, as an alcoholic, if you have a drink, you crave more. And that's what we learned at AA. But before I went to AA, I used to drink a little bit too much, and I'd crave more, and I used to drink for pain. I had a spinal operation in the hospital, and I met a Tasmanian lady. She wanted to get married. I was working night shift, and I used to use alcohol. No good at all. Use alcohol as a painkiller.
Well, you know, Johnny and Mike, we've talked about this on the show, and thank you for being so candid and so honest about, you know, your personal life in the realm of, because this can help other people, you know, and that's what our show is about, Direction of the Heart. And you're an amazing man of many you've gone through in your life, and you've stopped drinking now, which is a great thing from what you said. So, but I'm saying a lot of people often tend to turn to some form of a substance to ease either physical pain or personal anguish, pain that they're going through, and later down the road, it longer does more damage than good. But thank God that, you know, you got back on track. But now, when you say you started boxing in your 30s, that's like for any athlete, ball player, boxer, kind of like, you know, a little later in life, because I would think, you know, you started out earlier. But in other words, you actually went in the ring professionally, like in your 30s.
I actually used boxing to sober up, because I drank myself into parks homeless, and my wife understandably left me. I drank myself homeless. I actually started realising with boxing, the more weeks, at first the more days I stayed sober, I could actually go into gyms and start sparring. And then I realised a few weeks sober, I could swim a few miles, I could run up a hill, I could go into the gym, the PCYCs, the gyms, and do a few rounds.
And mine, yeah. And you said,
and then in the end, I started going in the best gyms where there was Commonwealth Games, Olympic representatives, the best gyms. Right. And I started realising if I go a month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks without a drink, and so that was my I've got a 6-round Fox Sports fight on YouTube. A welterweight had just come off a good win, and I went 6 weeks without a drink, and I did 6 rounds with him.
Well, you know, you see,
I managed to drop him 3 times.
Well, it shows that you could do anything that you put your mind to. And Mike, you know, we've talked about this many times about people from all walks of life that have been on our show, and everyone has a story, and you have an amazing story that, you know, there were rough times in your life, and there were highs and lows and rocky roads, but you got back on track, you know, and I commend you for that, Johnny. And so in your career, I mean, did you box heavyweight, middleweight, welterweight, lightweight?
Initially, I was a welterweight, which at my age I couldn't eat to make weight, so I looked very lethargic in that fight. Unfortunately, then, the book I've written, I haven't published it yet. Unfortunately, I went back on the grog after that fight because the nefarious boxing promoter, trainer, wouldn't pay me for the fight, and there was a bit of skullduggery involved with the boxing promoter, and I told him, well, I'm leaving you, and I went back to Tasmania to be with my wife to get back together, and unfortunately, he had a close friend there, a boxing promoter there, and that's the first chapter of my book, Boxer Hobo.
That you cover a lot of that in the book, of the corruption that went on within the boxing industry, you know?
Well, I wake up in... My first chapter's Hobo is Robo, because when I wake up in the neurotrauma ward with a fractured skull, my skull was fractured in 2 places. I thought I was Robocop.
It's literally. Like, he's got an amazing story. I mean, this is going to be...
If anyone sees the movie...
go a little longer than a normal show if we have time, because when we have people that have like when Rand was on, and other people like that have and Richard Nelson, amazing scientist, that we tend to go a little longer. But Johnny, you got a lot to share with our viewers, and I mean, you know, this is your platform, so tell us more. I know there was a lot.
A bit more brief, but certain heavyweight boxers that I was sparring with in Tasmania, I mean, in their gym, they'd admit that they were criminals, and I just laughed. I was just there for boxing. And but unfortunately, when I went to the boxing promotion, like I say, on the street, my skull was fractured on the street. I was hit from behind. Whether I was hit with a weapon or my head hit the concrete, I don't know. But unfortunately, after that, the injustice against me was so bad that I went back to my original so-called manager for help, and that's where my boxing career started.
Okay, so in other words, when you had the injury, you went to them for help?
Yep. All the help I wanted was justice. I just wanted to find out why I woke up in this.
The injury happened, it took place in the ring, correct? Or outside?
No, sorry. Boxing is in a soft ring. It's sport. It's
Right.
sport. Street crime separate.
Okay.
On the street, I was hit from behind on the concrete street. Not the boxing ring. It's got nothing to do with sport. We're talking about criminals.
I got you. Okay.
And I was left in the gutter with my skull fractured. There was witnesses. There was a camera on me. There's a camera on me. Witnesses gave statements. The witnesses said who did it. The book discloses it all. That is actually the.
So do you think that this injury that you sustained was intentional? That someone tried to do harm to you?
This is called a novel for disguise.
Right. Right.
This one here.
That's the one I started reading. Yeah. I started.
This is the real one with all the real names in it.
Mm-hmm.
This has got the real names. That's got novel for disguise names.
Mm-hmm.
But years later, after not drinking for years, sobering up.
In other words, in this book, you started to actually name people, name actual names.
Book three's got the forged statements that the police did to protect these people that tried to kill me.
Right.
It's got the forged statements. It's got everything. It's got
why do you think
being offence reports.
Can you, without being too personal? I mean, I know I don't want to get too personal, but is there anything that you can expound on as to why they tried to do this to you? Was it due to the corruption of things that were going on and that they didn't want you to talk?
The only way I can explain it is because with brain damage, I mean, I've done a lot of boxing since my head injury. I've been knocked unconscious.
You may have had brain damage, but you got it more together than a lot of people I know.
I'm just saying, I write better than I talk, fighter, writer. And to answer your question, the boxing promoter answered the question for you. A few years later for me, he answered the question when he caught the Sydney ferry, and he knocked a 70-year-old. It's all on. Everything in my book is all on Google.
Right.
He knocked a 70-year-old man over with a blow to the head, and the 70-year-old man's skull fractured against the ferry.
Wow.
And then I got the answers to my questions that you're asking.
Mm-hmm.
He got off of that because his auntie is a federal senator.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've named her. I've put all their names in the books. I put all the evidence in the books.
Well, it appears that, the harm that they were trying to do to you and that elderly gentleman was because they were afraid that people were going to start to, spill what was going on, the truth of what they were doing.
Is that the whole premise and inspiration you to write the books, is to expose these people and the corruption that's going on in the industry, and also expose them for the trying to kill you and knock you off? I'm sure you took it personally.
Originally, I wanted justice.
Wanted justice, yes.
And the editor made me change the names.
Notice, thank you, Johnny, for saying that. He wanted justice, not revenge, justice.
So that's all I wanted was justice. But when you've got senior sergeants of the police forging statements for a federal senator whose boxing promoter nephew fractures the skull of 70-year-old men on the public transport, you want more than justice then. So then, and I still just want justice, but unfortunately my story leads to the worst corruption in this. Boxing in Australia has been destroyed. I've actually made these, not my first two, these two books are now free They're free online because the media are actually suppressing me because the people in the books are the most rich and famous people in Australia.
Did we lose it?
We lost his video.
We lost your video for some reason. Are you there, Johnny?
Yeah, can you still hear me?
I can hear you, but we can't see you.
Is that a problem with this computer?
We lost your video feed. Listen, Johnny,
we lost video of you.
Are you, just quick question while so I don't forget it. Aren't you concerned about your life being in danger due to writing these books and exposing them and
sure.
in this manner?
My fourth book, Boxing Exploitation, details all the evidence about the third time they tried to kill me. And they actually tried to kill me to silence me, to stop me publishing the books.
Yeah, really.
Anyone that reads...
What Mike's asking is, now that the books are out, do you still feel that your life is in danger?
Not only do I want justice, there's boxers in this country as we speak dying. One just died recently. So then I thought that I could get some media attention with my books. Like I said, books 3 and 4 are free online. If anyone in America reads them, they'll see.
Where can people get it?
Yeah, we want you to tell our viewers. Well, you're on Amazon.com, correct? Right, Johnny?
Yes. Right. Amazon. I want people to read the 3 and 4 for free because I'm standing up for the whole of the boxing community.
Right, and I commend you for that, you know.
America. My books involve America. It's a global thing. Because when the great Roy Jones Jr. from Florida...
I was going to say, you know, when you say it's a global thing, absolutely. And you know, our show deals with the projection of and perpetuation of world peace and global peace. But, you know, when you're saying for the Boxing Commission, it's not just there in Australia. This goes on here in the States, too. And in many sports. You see it with baseball. You see it with football. You see it with basketball, the scandals. But boxing is a profession that, you know, you see a lot of that way back even. And now...
Yeah, sorry, Pete, but my circumstances don't go on in America. The bloke that runs it here, that's named in the book, Roy Jones Jr. and his management, they don't know about me, but when they went home after dealing with these same people, they were absolutely devastated. They couldn't work out what was going on. If anyone from Florida, anyone in New York, America reads my books and sees, I mean, even what they did to Roy Jones Jr. when he came here, he disclosed it as soon as he got home. And he was confused. He couldn't understand the way they operated.
Do you feel that all of this, you were kind of blacklisted in a way, you know, by the Boxing Commission because of you?
Yes, I've been, me and my books have been suppressed.
Yeah. Right.
That's why I've made the true crime. The first 2 are novels for disguise. Books 3 and 4 are true crime autobiographies with all of the evidence in them. And I'm just standing up for boxing. If people like Teddy Atlas, Oscar De La Hoya, all the good people over there knew about my story, or even if their friends or their family read my books, my free ones, they would all see the clear evidence that boxing's been destroyed in Australia, not America.
Well, that's why we have you on the show. It's a big part of it is to get that out to our viewers and to the world. You have an amazing story to tell, and this can enlighten a lot of people so that, you know, it will also bring promotion to your books. And
unfortunately, I'm as mad as a cut snake.
I can't say that I blame you.
But, I mean, these people I'm talking about are lower than a snake's belly. But anyway, when you've read the book, you might agree with me. But
I just started reading it, and you know, you can't put it down. It's that, Mike. I tell you, these books are amazing, and you know, he sent me. He was kind enough to send me all 4, and I'm reading them. In between everything else, I'm an avid reader. And Johnny, I tell you, truthfully, as an endorsement, you have an amazing story. And I haven't even gotten to the other 3 yet. But, you know, this is what we want to share with our viewers, that here in America, if they can get your book on Amazon.com, might even try and get it into like a Barnes and Nobles or some of the good bookstores, you know. And
the few Americans that know about my books, not many know because I'm suppressed. I mean, a Marine...
A lot of people all over the world will know from our show, and Mike.
A Marine deployed in and happened to read it, and he gave me a 5-star review. And at the same time he gave me the review, an American general deployed in Afghanistan followed me on Twitter at the same time. But hardly anyone knows about my books, and that's why I've made 3 and 4 free. I mean, those books, I'm hoping, force these people into court. And I'm also hoping that they've sequestered or put me out of boxing when I'm good for boxing. I'm trying to make it.
On Amazon.com, they could go onto the Kindle and actually read it electronically too.
Yeah, there's all the sites. I'm pretty sure they're free on Barnes and Noble.
What are you? I have this question here, Johnny. What are you? What do you want the outcome to be? Do you want these people to be able to be held accountable? Are you trying to have not just people exposed, but possibly you're looking at putting people away for a long time?
I want
you're talking about.
Cops. Sorry, Mike. I want cops that forge statements to protect criminals that left me in the gutter with a fractured skull, and they forged all the evidence is in the books. They forged the statements because I found out 18 months after I came out of a coma, I found out there was a hidden witness's statement from...
How many months? 8 months you were in a coma?
18 months.
18? Wow.
Now, have you went to... I'm sure you went to the authorities about this, and you have a case pending against them? Or are you filing charges?
I write like a cross between Stephen King and Jim Carrey, but...
Did you what Johnny just said, though? 18 months he was in a coma. He could have died.
That's unbelievable.
No. Sorry, you've misunderstood me, Pete.
I'm sorry.
You've misunderstood me. When I was lying in the gutter with a fractured skull,
right,
witnesses ran to the cops to say who did it.
Right.
So they had to do a witness's statement.
Right.
But when I got shipped off to hospital in a coma,
yeah, right, you couldn't.
They hid the witness's statement for 18 months.
I got the witness's statement. How long were you in a coma?
I was in a coma for a few days.
Oh, okay.
But what I'm trying... If you read the book...
I see what you're saying now. So they hid all of that evidence for a good 18 months before...
Yes. I mean, there was a camera that filmed it. They hid that. The reason why I found out...
Alone should be sufficient evidence if they got it on camera, you know?
No, but they hid all the evidence.
Yeah, they hid it. Well, they made sure it got lost or disappeared, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I say, anyone that... You only have to read the first page of any of my books to see that this writer can write a lot better than he talks. But like I'm saying, if police do things like this to stop justice for someone to protect criminals, which they have, like they're criminals themselves for what they've done to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. They're just trying to find a badge. That's
so
they're worse than the criminals.
In essence, I'm trying to wrap my head around this.
No,
in a lot of ways, what you're doing with your books is getting your own justice, since the authorities won't do anything about it and nobody's being held accountable. You're going to make sure that you're going to have your own rough justice by exposing them through your books. Correct?
Yeah,
well, they're going to be...
That's it, Mike. He's trying to get the truth out there to people.
Yeah.
They're going to be hurting other people.
Yeah.
As well. They'll be hurting people right now. I mean, like I said, there's the old man on the ferry. In 2012, when I went to America for the first time and I lived with LA's homeless on a 90-day visa because I didn't have any money, that same year, one of the chaps in my books, I mean, when you think about September 11th in America, we were all just as devastated as Americans here.
Right.
One of the main characters in my book, he said that it wasn't terrorism, it was an act of God, and America's brought September 11th upon themselves.
Yeah. Well,
these are the sort of people that are in my book.
Yeah.
And like Mike says, my life's in danger.
Right, they're barbaric. Exactly.
Yes, and when the chap bashed the old man on the ferry, his federal senator auntie went to court, got him off. He got a 2-year jail term. She made it suspended as senator. And then with $34,000 taxpayers' money, she bought him a brand new boxing gym. It's all on Google.
Wow.
And the guy that said America's brought September 11th upon themselves, he put his arm around this guy that had done that to the old man on the ferry. And I'm just telling you, these are all the most rich and famous boxers in Australia that all the media are looking after all these people in my books. And the public don't know anything about what I'm telling you because they've suppressed my books.
Right. Well, this is a good platform to get it out to the world, and that's I felt you had an amazing test.
Do they sound like ambassadors for boxing to you, these people?
Well,
No,
I tell you, you kind of hit a nail on the head when you had mentioned the mainstream media is being protecting these people.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the higher ups that are the corrupt ones that are doing these terrible things to people behind the scenes that nobody knows about. It's all being covered up, and as you say, destroying evidence or being held from people to not know the truth because of, I guess, status of the celebrity status within the sports industry. These people are being protected.
Well, I know about you.
But they've given me good books, though, Mike. They've given me 4 good books. Sorry, they've given me 6 good books. I've only published 4. Like I said, book 4, Boxing Exploitation, is a great read for anyone. They can read it for free because I'm suppressed. It discloses that they desperately tried to kill me, to stop me publishing the book. Anyone that reads it can see all the evidence, and I have a good laugh too. People say they laugh, they cry, they laugh, they cry. This man, the worst one, is ruling boxing here, and he comes to America all the time. If Americans love a good read and they want to see the truth about what's happening to boxing in this country, they just need to read book 4, Boxing Exploitation.
What do you believe the solution is? To how do you eliminate people that are in that, within the boxing industry like that? How do you get them removed from their position?
Well, I'm not a criminal like them. I don't want to give them a knuckle sandwich, but because that's how a criminal would behave, But
boom, boom.
with the books, I'm just hoping to. If a bloke's got the courage to get in the ring after he's had his skull fractured, which is my heavyweight fight on YouTube's after my skull.
I tell you, Johnny, it almost, you remind me of
I'm saying they should have given me a fair go, Mike. But instead of giving me a fair go, they just tried to silence me.
You know what you are to me, Johnny? You're like David and Goliath, who you're taking on the giant.
He's a true hero, though.
You're taking on the giant with your slingshot. Your slingshot is your books, the pen is mightier than the sword. All that comes into play with
and Apostle Paul did the scriptures where he said the pen is mightier than the sword. Words are very powerful if they're constructively used. And Johnny, what you're doing is commendable. What comes to my mind, if I might just say this, is that the corruption that you're saying in the boxing industry in Australia. But if we go overall, worldwide, like I said, sports, politicians, our governments, there's corruption everywhere. It's just a seed. Mike, we discuss this every week on the show, where the seed that's out there is you're going to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there's always going to be people like, Johnny, what you're saying, these corrupt individuals that will try to hide evidence, think they can get away with murder, thinks they can get away with anything. And, even though this might be considered a cold case per se, or a statute of limitations has lapsed and they've tried to suppress your books, you're getting the word out there. And now you're on worldwide television getting that word out there. And, on behalf of Mike and Bruce and I and of all our viewers, we're very proud of you, Johnny. We're very proud of you.
Thanks, Pete. But there's actually no statute of limitations on what they've done to me on
Yeah.
I mean, I've been talking to legal aid lawyers that wish that they could help me. They've suppressed me. They knocked me unconscious for 6 years after my skull fracture, for 6 years, and they used my head injury to knock me unconscious for that long and stop me attaining a lawyer. I haven't even mentioned the worst guy in the book. There's a cyclist over there that's been exposed. These guys are far worse.
Well, you see what you're proving is, you can't knock a good man down. He gets back up again. And you've got, God in your heart. You're not seeking vengeance. You're seeking justice.
Well, I haven't had a drink for years. That's the reason why I'm alive, is I haven't had a drink for years, and all the lies that they tell everyone about me. I mean, when I was in America, I've had 5 months in America over 2 trips. I didn't have one drink when I was there.
Well,
I mean, when I was in...
You put that behind you. It was an obstacle in the way. You can think clearer. You're writing well. You're doing a marvelous thing. And what you're doing can help other people. And that's what I really respect about you. It's not a selfish thing. That selfish would be just seeking revenge for what they did to you. You're thinking of that poor man, the elderly gentleman on that ferry. You're thinking of other people that are maybe...
Well, a boxer just died here.
Yeah, going through what you went through. There's people dying.
But if you read the books, you can see why. I mean, the guy at the top, I mean, I've put in all the psychological proof about him. I've read books on psychology since I sobered up. I've read books on defamation, the law, everything. My books 3 and 4 are actually a gold mine for a lawyer or a manager.
Right.
But in this country, they can't see me, and I can't find them through suppression, which I've learnt.
Well,
through...
Mike asked a little earlier, and I might want to go in the same realm as that to ask you, what do you think now, in other words, today, here and now, especially that this is still continuing, the corruption and what they're doing, and like you said, other people getting killed or hurt, and the corruption there. What can be done to get to these kingpins, the high-ups, and bring them down, expose them?
Well, I starred one of the best boxers in New York 12 months ago, Big John Douglas. It was great. But what I want to do from here is, I mean, there's a possibility with Pete DeLorenzo and Mike that you could send a fault line through the ocean back to Australia like a tsunami. There's definitely good journalists and good media here, but they don't know I exist. And I just believe, being lucky enough to be on your show, even if it's next year, months or years away, I might somehow find the good journalists and the good media here that don't know I exist.
You should get with Taylor Morgan, Pete. She's right there in Australia.
She was our good friend Taylor Morgan, as you know.
Wales.
I became friends with Taylor several years ago, and she's a great author. And it was through Taylor that she introduced me to Johnny. And when I corresponded with him, I says, I'd love to have you on as a guest and let you tell your story. And Mike, as you could clearly see, this is a man that's seen a lot, has even risked his life for the sake of justice, not revenge, and trying to help other people.
But I've ended up stuck up a gum tree, though.
Well,
I've been
giving it a bloody go.
I'm wondering why the media, like you said, you've got good journalists and media. Why haven't they jumped on this? I mean, that would be. I was in broadcasting, and they would jump on a story like that here.
When I was in America, Pete, the population is so big there.
Oh,
absolutely. Everyone I met, I got on with everyone. They all said you'd be rich and famous if your story was true.
It is true. Yeah.
The population here is so small. I mean, all the documented evidence of my fractured skull, all the fights on Fox Sports, I mean, all the evidence is there for a journalist to see my story is true. But the population here is so small compared to America. I mean, there's one boxer that the main character I haven't really mentioned yet. He owns all the media here. He's on the television all the time. He's probably about as rich and famous as that cyclist was. And he kept his story covered up and kept people suppressed for a long time. I mean, you must know what I'm talking about. It was a long time before in the end he was crying on the telly saying, yes, I did take drugs.
Right.
I mean, with all his popularity, propaganda, fad money and everything, he kept it quiet for a long time. Now, this guy here is the same. My books just prove everything about him. I mean, this guy, you know Floyd Mayweather? Floyd Mayweather was in the corner of Australia's best light heavyweight of this century in Las Vegas.
What's his name? Yeah. Okay.
And this chap was the best fighter here. And he fought title, he fought Animac, it was fantastic. But this other guy wouldn't fight him when he was at his peak with Floyd Mayweather. But years later, when this guy retired, he had to retire because of neurological problems.
I see.
He was forced to retire. And then 4 years later, after he retired for neurological problems, then these bad guys, the ones I'm talking about, they took him over to Perth. And it was it was just after Roy Jones had gone home. And they got Roy Jones Jr. first. And then when Roy went home and his management, they couldn't work out what happened. And they were in the media saying it. They couldn't understand. Then they grabbed this other poor guy that had retired, Australia's best light heavyweight. 4 years after he retired from neurological problems. It's all on Google, what's in my book. It's all on Google. I've published it. But the media just cover it all up. And this guy, when they read my first book...
Why would the media cover it up unless they were paid off? Or I don't understand, because the media would want to get
the guy's got 100 million.
Yeah, they want... Well, yeah, sure. See, they pay off.
It's all about money talks, brother.
Go after a juicy story like that and want to get the truth, like a doctor.
Like I said, if anyone's listening, I write a lot better than I talk. And yeah, you'll fall off your seat when you read the stuff because you can see it's true. I've had people go...
I tell you what, Johnny, I want to say thank you so much for sharing your story. And, your books, I guess people go to Amazon, just type in Johnny Noctor, author.
You got to get the
Johnny T. Noctor. Johnny T.
Noctor, author, and
the hobo.
Book should come up. Yeah, man, this is very, very powerful stuff. And without... There's corruption everywhere. I'm sure there's been corruption in the boxing industry for years, and the only way to stop corruption...
That's a good hat, Mike. You look a bit like the lead singer in AC/DC with that hat.
There's corruption in all industries. The music industry,
people
the
need to be
industry, the sports industry, the corruption in our government. The only way to stop the corruption is first to expose it. Exactly. And that's what you're doing, and I pray that we are helping you to become a ripple to where there'll be some people out there that'll create some websites to uncover the corruption in the boxing industry, and blogs and more forums, and people can unite to come together with their stories.
The boxing industry in America.
There's no suppression here on American Hearts Radio.
No, if the boxing industry in America were to read my third and fourth books, Coward Punch Corruption and Boxing Exploitation, they would just shut these people down out of boxing here that I'm talking about, that I've named in the books. I mean, like I said, I've got AC/DC all through my books. How good are they? After September 11th, what did they do? They went to New York. How good is the song? I feel safe in New York City. You've got to see the film clip because my books touch on prejudice.
Right. Oh, that's what on our show, Johnny. It's interesting that you mentioned that because on Direction of the Heart, we talk about that the hatred, the violence, the prejudice that's in the world is just off the hook. And it's everywhere. It's not just here.
Can I just briefly explain the prejudice in my books? I've got mates that are cops. Like I said, that film clip in New York City with AC/DC is with the New York police. And yet you've got this bloke here in Australia that the media look after, saying America's brought September 11th upon themselves. And they look after this bloke, and he gets his millions, he gets the media. It's good and bad in everything.
Yeah, people that think and say things like that America brought upon ourselves, that's just sheer ignorance.
Well, it's the opposite to what Brian Johnson and AC/DC did with the cops over there with the I Feel Safe in New York City song. And all I'm touching on there is just because I've exposed criminal cops that forge statements and that, that doesn't mean I hate cops. There's great cops. There's good and bad in everything.
There's good and bad, yeah. I mean, even in the law, there's corrupt and there's good policemen. I mean, I've had police officers in my family, and my first cousin was slain. I was 11 years old at the time. He was killed in the line of duty, my first cousin, and brutally.
Well, I've got mates that are cops that don't talk to me anymore because they can't believe what I've been through, and they can't believe I can't get justice. And like I say, good and bad in everything.
Good cops would, but, you know, there's a lot of them that just turn their head and they play deaf, dumb, and blind because they don't want to they don't want to deal with it because they're corrupt as well, you know.
My father was a Chicago cop back in the 60s during the racial riots out there.
Yeah.
You know, I tell you, Johnny, man, you're leaving me a little speechless with my head spinning around a little bit.
I tell you, it's an amazing testimony. And he just paraphrased right now. You know, the books go more detail, and that's why I said I haven't been able to.
Yeah, I urge all of our viewers and everybody out there to really go to Amazon.com, Google Johnny T. Noctor, pick up his books, be educated, man. You know,
Johnny, do you have
Johnny get the justice that he needs?
And I've got to come back for a conclusion for my book, America, and give Big John Douglas and his mates at Gleason's another knuckle bloody sandwich.
There you go, Johnny.
But you know, Johnny, I said when we had Rand...
Play it old school, knock your butt out.
Right, Mike and Bruce, when we had Rand Campbell on, amazing testimony about what he went through, and he now has the Lord, and you know, he's writing a book as well, and wants to do a film on it. But Johnny, I will go so far as to say that as a producer and a director and a screenwriter, and you're not getting the media attention there, if you get here to the States, I can guarantee it can get that to the media. That would be like on,
well,
you know,
like I said, Pete, this is, you know, I don't know Johnny's.
That would be on Night Watch. That would be all over the place, and we could do a documentary on it.
That would, you know.
Yeah, American Hearts Radio, and combined with my, we could do a documentary.
Maybe when I come back, you can come up to Gleason's gym with me.
You know,
yeah, we've got they're the ones in Australia that I've approached that won't even answer me, and I'm in deep shock with the detail in my books that they won't answer me.
Are you a spiritual man? You have a real heavy belief in God and Jesus? Where do you stand on that issue?
I'm an older sober member of AA, more like Gandalf the White than Gandalf the Grey. But as far as spirituality goes, I find my boxerhobo.blogspot.com. I find my spirituality comes out of me. I've got Pikes Peak, America's greatest mountain. I like running up mountains covered in snow. I find that's to do with spirituality.
Well, I tell you, I think God is using you as a vessel to be able to get justice and expose people. Like I said, your story reminds me of a David and Goliath.
Yeah.
You are taking on the giant, and God has placed you in that position and spared your life to be able to do so.
Clearly,
that's my belief, and you know, I wish you the best.
Thanks, Mike, but I'm going to come back there next year for a conclusion. I hope I'll get to catch up with you. You can see me give him a knuckle sandwich at the Gleason's gym. I just need one last chapter.
I feel like
that needs to be the title of your last chapter book, Knuckle Sandwich.
I just want 10 rounds with 3 of the hardest fighters in Gleason's gym.
But Johnny, honestly, I could see clearly that God is working in your life, and you are an instrument in his hand and a vessel of his love and peace. You are not doing this as revenge. You are doing it as justice and to help.
No, I want justice. Thanks. Can I just quickly say something about my boxing? And I've explained it in my book. I explain it better writing. But I actually only kept boxing after my head injury at first because I was angry. And instead of becoming a criminal and getting an eye for an eye, I had to channel my aggression somewhere. And that's why I kept boxing.
Right.
But in the end, I found that, you know, running up mountains sober for years. I mean, they told me in America you can't make the top of that mountain in November. There's too much snow. You don't have snowshoes. But I made it at boxerhobo.blogspot.com. Has got. But what I'm trying to say is, I have actually boxed to let my aggression out, because any man that reads my books knows that generally you turn into a criminal yourself, not getting justice against these people.
Right.
And I've had to channel my aggression somewhere, so I've channeled it in sporting ring.
Well, see, there again, I respect you highly in the fact that, you know, you took a sport where, you know, you went and you took your aggression out in the ring and in the gym, as opposed to going and doing crime, which was.
But I was actually never given a fight, though.
Right.
My books expose the fact that I wasn't even given a fight.
Right.
The best gyms in Australia that I trained at, 2008, 2009, I mean, the sparring was great, no fight. They'd stopped me fighting. The books explain that they used my head injury and only got me fights when I was nowhere near a gym. All the evidence is there. Boxing in this country is destroyed.
I tell you what, I know there's a lot of boxing fans out there around the world, and everybody, make sure you check out Johnny T. Noctor's books on Amazon. Man, I wish we had more time, but
well,
we have run out of time, Johnny, and
thank you very much for having me on the show. I love boxing, and I'm hoping boxing will come good again in this country, but I'm just going to try and weed these people out first.
Well, I pray you get the justice that you seek.
You have another 2 more books that aren't published yet, but we've got The Boxer Hobo, The President, Hobo Chronicles. We've got The Coward Punch Corruption, and then The Boxing Exploitation is the heavyweight one, which really gets into.
My novels for disguise, Boxer Hobo, The President, are the best, but the true crime or autobiographies are still a good read. And very good for lawyers and journalists, especially. But actually, if you get through the legal jargon at the start of Boxing Exploitation, which proves that they have to go to court with me and there's no statute of limitations, if you get through that, Chapter 3 is a very good read in Boxing Exploitation. It's got my synopsis. It's got everything. You only have to start reading from Chapter 3 if you want a good read and a good belly laugh.
Well, I read it cover to cover, and you know, I think
writer.
And you got to get here to the States, and then I can help you. You know, Mike. You know, we can. You know, similar to Rand, like he said. You know, Rand went through a lot, and a lot of his pain was in that ring. You know, he got it out, but you know, and there were rough roads that he went down, and you saw the episode. He gave an amazing testimony of what that man went through. But God works in our lives, Johnny, and He's working in yours. He's no doubt working.
Thanks very much. Well, thanks very much for having me on the show.
Oh, you're welcome, Johnny. And I tell you, you know, I love boxing, and I had the honor when I was a child, young man in life in Chicago, to actually have dinner with Tony Zale.
Wow.
He was my very close friend of mine's uncle, and you know that was the bloodiest fights in middleweight history was Graziano and Tony Zale. Yeah. And you know, boxing is part of our culture. It's part of who we are as people. It's part of a major $1 billion a year industry in sports, and there's so much corruption in that area. And
would you mind if I just quickly
people as well?
I have to say,
would you mind if I just quickly touched on Pete? I love what Mr. Pete DeLorenzo is doing with the peace movement.
Yes,
I'm just a bit.
Mike is we're all.
Just ask a quick question about that.
Yeah.
The American general that's now retired, that's all through my book, Boxing Exploitation, he doesn't know he is. I mean, he says to win without risk is to triumph without glory. So I've put that quote in there. I love that quote.
Yeah, that's an awesome quote.
I had an atheist father and a religious mother, so that's a hard household to grow up in.
Are you speaking about?
Very hard.
I love his Twitter, and his love of God and Jesus and his wife, and everything's absolutely fantastic. But I just wanted to ask your opinion, because I agree with him.
Right.
He believes they have to go to places like Afghanistan to make the peace happen. And all the Afghanistan people love him. They love all the Marines and that are there. Do you believe that you need to go overseas to fight for peace?
Well, we hope and pray that. I don't believe that fighting is the answer. You know, nothing is ever accomplished with fighting. When we had to protect our soil and our freedom, you know, in self-defense, but to educate. And I think if we're going to go over to these other countries, in answer to your question, I believe, and Mike, you and I have talked about this with many guests on the show, is to educate them, to take them and show them there is a better way. See, when they're taught love from the get-go, Johnny, you know, from a child, hate, prejudice, kill, go take a weapon, go kill that person. And they hate people because we stand for freedom. But you see, if we can go there and educate them and teach them, you know, and teach them that they don't have to live the way they're living and dispense it. But, you know, it's very hard to do that when it's ingrained in someone their whole life from a child.
But the majority of the population are just nice people.
Yeah.
I mean, like Muslims or in Afghanistan, the majority are nice people, and there's a very small minority of terrorists. I'm saying, how can you can't teach these people?
Yeah, I agree that, you know, well, it's not that you can't. Nothing is impossible with God, but I know what you're saying. It is almost impossible to try and get them to change their pattern because they're so brainwashed.
You know what, Johnny? It's the corruption. The corruption that's there, that's in the system, that needs to be eradicated, just like the corruption in the boxing industry.
And you know what else?
It needs to be eliminated and destroyed.
Well,
and if you're going to have to go out...
Even if it's a hobo that does it.
But here's the key, though. You see, without backlashing, we're not like pinpointing and fingering at the Muslim sect of people, because not all Muslim people. I know Muslim people that have embraced Christianity. But the Muslim faith is teaching that, you know, like Hitler did. You know, he wanted to annihilate all the Jews. He used them as a scapegoat. And they are teaching now, unless you're Muslim, you know, they want to annihilate any sect of people, any color, any race, any other faith other than Muslim. And that's just as bad as communism, socialism. It's the same concept, but they're barbaric. And you know, like Mike has brought out, and I have brought out many week after week on the show, is we had the Taliban, we had, you know, Al Qaeda, and now you got ISIS, and they're taking off
Muslim Brotherhood
and children simply because they're Christians. They're beheading them.
Well, Christians are under attack and for execution, man. And we have to defend ourselves and defend the peace and defend faith in the name of our survival in the Lord Jesus.
Right.
You know?
And that's why when Johnny directed that question, I think more so than, yeah, you have to defend yourself, but I think more so, and we've discussed this week after week, is to educate these people. Here in the United States, other countries that there is no, and this is what I'm going in to the UN with. You know, little me. I mean, I'm just a man. I'm a professional entertainer, but I am a humanitarian, and Mike, so are you, and many of us. So, but for them to ask me to address the UN, I said, I'm not going in there with no rehearsed speech. I'm not going in there. I'm going in there like, you know, to the powers that be of our land, if you will. Our kingdom is not of this world, so it would be like, I feel like I'm Moses facing Pharaoh, or Paul facing Roman Empire, but I'm walking in here saying,
Roman Empire.
I'm walking in here like, remember Ross Perot when he was like, here's the deal, you know, lay it on the table. Say, and I said that to them in a major conference call a while back, and I quoted the scripture from Isaiah, which is repeated in Philippians, that they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and neither shall they learn war, and their spears into pruning hooks, and neither shall they learn war anymore. And I said, but gentlemen, the next verse says, when they say peace, peace, then shall come sudden destruction. And there was like dead air, Mike, Johnny, you know, there was like dead air. And then I says, and you know why, gentlemen? And they said, why is that, Mr. DeLorenzo? And I says, well, one major word, fear, common denominator.
Fear.
It's like play football and get into real estate. I want what we got, and we want what you got too. Or we're going to be worried about you coming over here and taking what we got. And it's like foolishness when I says when we can barter, and why, if this nation has grain or oats and wheat, and this country has oil and that country has whatever, we barter and share. I said, then you won't need the implements of war. And again, it was dead air. And I said, you know what, Mr. DeLorenzo, you're right. And I said, I'm right.
Beautiful.
Listen,
but
we are small minority, though.
Speech rehearsed, you see.
Guys,
so that's what you got to get across to, like what Johnny said, to these other countries. And when I go to the UN, you know, you're facing diplomats and delegates from all over the world, but that's what we want to get.
This is where it starts, with the things that we're doing right here. Johnny T. Noctor, thank you so much for being on Direction of the Heart series. In the words of the Dalai Lama, the purpose of life is to exist.
Yeah.
You know
Thanks
what?
very much.
I love survival. But and we do that, Mike. We talked about that too. That we do that every day when we walk out our door.
I'm as fat as a lizard drinking.
But Johnny's going for truth, justice, the American way, or you know,
as mad as a cut snake.
We salute you. We
Just
salute you.
DrHobo.blogspot.com.
We salute you, mate, and you got to get here to the States. And
I want to be a paperback writer. Paperback writer. The good old Beatles.
Get Johnny T. Noctor's books at Amazon.
So
that's right. God bless you.
Paperback writer.
We'll talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. God bless.
Johnny, God bless you. Keep up the good work.
Thanks very much.
And we will
see you next year.
We'll be in touch. Okay.
Bye-bye.